Just beat the devil out of it.
Hello, 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 hello. Are we ready for some more podcasting? Welcome to In the Closet with. It's once again Pride Month, and this year I wanted to celebrate with my fellow creatives. Throughout June, the stream will be guested by a variety of people where we talk about the queer experience. And today I'm joined by Jessica, she, they, also known as Annie Real on Twitter. Hello!
Hi!
Hey, for some reason, give me a hot second. Technical difficulties, as always. For some reason, your beautiful little shark isn't here.
Oh no! I literally just posted about how adorable that shark is.
There we go. It's there. You are there. Wonderful. So,
Amazing.
Jessica, do you wanna introduce yourself?
Sure. I am an illustrator who loves painting surreal things, dark things, sometimes the occasional cute things. And I like working on personal projects, projects that I like really enjoy or that are for a cause. And I'm kind of like I pop into like all the different genres if I can. So like comics, books, tabletop, games, kind of wherever I'm needed to kind of help build out a world. So yeah.
Yeah, I think, if I'm not completely mistaken, I first stumbled across your art maybe around either last year or the year before, and I was just blown the heck away.
Oh, I feel the same way about your stuff.
And that's so interesting because our stuff is so different. Like, especially style-wise, it's so different.
Yeah, I mean, I look at your stuff and I'm like, everything looks so beautiful and pretty, and the way you render, and oh.
Not me blushing. But that's how I feel about your stuff. I especially remember a piece which I'm not gonna do justice in re-describing it, but it's a character standing in a field with like a ginormous like beast-like head. I think it's in like one of the pieces in your current pinned tweet. Like, am I describing it correctly?
I haven't even looked at my pin tweet in a while.
Give me a hot second. This is great because, as we know, visual stuff in podcast format always works great. But okay. Yeah. So it's like very red, and it's this beautiful character with like thigh high stockings and
Well,
lingerie, and then
yeah.
like a black beast like head like popping out of the neck.
Yeah, the wolf of Zongshan, yeah.
Oh, it's so beautiful. Like when I saw that, I was just like, Mamma mia, I need a second.
That one was like right before COVID. It was probably one of like my favorite pieces before everything hit the fan.
Oh, it's so. Oh, I could gush about it forever. I love it so much.
Aw, that's good to hear, especially since it was like a purely personal piece, so that like, even better.
Oh, there is something truly special about that when you do like either if it's like personal in general, original characters, like it's from you. It's not fan art. Like there's nothing wrong about fan art, obviously, but there's just something when an audience connects with something that is 100% yours.
Yeah.
That is so gratifying.
Yeah.
Alrighty, let me dive into the first question, which is when did you know that you were perfectly queer?
So I knew at the end of high school, which would put me at around 17 to 18 years old.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, there's a long history of stuff before that, but like definitively and saying it like out loud and knowing it Like, truly, probably 17, 18 years old.
So you were open about it around that age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I told some friends maybe like a bit earlier than that,
Mm-hmm.
but by the time I was about to head off to college, I mean, I think that like heading out to college and feeling like I was going to be independent and like kind of doing a new start to my life, I think that kind of gave me a bit of that push to be more open about that.
Yeah, that's actually interesting because that seems like a kind of like a reoccurring theme with a lot of queer people in particular, where you've grown up in like, especially if you've grown up and like lived your life in more or less one place throughout like childhood and teen years. So you feel kind of like maybe trapped or held back in a way from expressing yourself or daring to like put yourself out there. And then for a lot of people going to like if you do higher education, that's usually how you leave that behind. You're like, I can be myself now, I can be the new me. Is that what it felt like for you?
I mean, yeah, there were a lot of things that happened before I left for college that definitely heightened that feeling of like excitement that I'm going to be doing something like and starting my own kind of thing here, my own like kind of adventure. I definitely feel like there was also a like a cathartic thing to it too. Um, and also like I feel like it was also a challenge. Like I feel like a lot of people may have their like ideas of themselves and like their identity really challenged when really tough things happen in their life or like really big life events
Mm-hmm.
that you like just can't turn away, you have to confront. And like I definitely feel like for a lot of young folk who are going to, you know, higher education and leaving home, like that can be like also like a really big, you know, decision. Not necessarily maybe even something exciting, it could be like really daunting and like anxiety, you know, kind of dripping with anxiety, but at the same time it's like making you question and, you know, I don't know, evolve things about yourself that you maybe wouldn't have if you had stayed, you know, in the same setting that you kind of grew up with and were comfortable in.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, me saying that for a lot of people, it's like freeing. That is just
Mm.
like, that's just one side of it. Because of course, there are people who are perfectly fine with where they grew up, and there is a safety to that, and you know, familiarity. So I guess I just or not assume, but like um, connect. For a lot of people, being queer is something that you kind of had to keep on the down low or hidden for a like a plethora of different reasons. But if it's okay to ask, did people around you have like a general positive reaction towards your identity, or?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think one part of it was the people that I ended up coming out to were people that I felt like safe around,
Mm.
and have been like, you know, good long-term friends with already. And then the new people that I came out to, I had already kind of connected with them in some way or another that again gave me that kind of like feeling of safety that I could say something and this, you know, that they wouldn't, you know, take something the wrong way or see me in like this whole different light. Like I definitely the people I came out to first, I was a little bit more picky about because I I I know they're probably not here in the stream, but like they are amazing people, and I feel like they were people that if I told, they would always continue to see me as me and not, you know, be I don't know, jaded or changed in how they saw me if I told them this, you know, thing about myself. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's like an interesting aspect to it. How you kind of have to keep in mind that a lot of people are going to view you differently. There's like you before coming out and you after coming out, and even though you're still you, and arguably better because now you're more comfortable, because hopefully at least, because you're your true self and you've found like a space where you can be that. It's as for some people you've flipped the switch and they're just like, nah, I can't acknowledge this side of you. So it's
Yeah.
I super get being more picky in the beginning about who you relate that kind of information to, because you don't want your first experience to be like, hey, I'm queer, to be met with Uggs.
Yeah, and like the people are obviously going to approach it like differently wherever you are, and
Mm,
I definitely say for like my experience that like initial kind of coming at it a little bit more strategically, like especially since before really being more open about it to other people and like bringing it up more in like casual conversation, I didn't have that like self-esteem before that, and also the like having to have kept it hidden for a long time, like in other things that kind of build up that trauma. It was like really important for me to build like confidence um in the beginning. So like having like a really bad negative experience, or being like just too willy-nilly about it in the beginning and having too much like unknowns and like not enough structure, I just feel like I would have imploded.
yeah, no, I think to me that makes a lot of sense, and I'm positive there are people out there who have been met with like a negative experience of coming out, and they just keep suppressing it and keep keeping it to themselves. And that's why I personally really want to have these kind of conversations, by showing that there's so many ways that you can be queer, and that queer people are just like, this is such a given to queer people, but not to shit on straight people, but to straight people, it's like there's a category of queers and that's it. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
there, like, even in 2022 we still have the tropes, and I I know that at least for me and for many other people, it was stuff like that made it difficult to navigate the terrain of labels, because I know to a lot of people labels isn't important, and to a lot of people it is, and I respect either side of it, but my hope with having these kind of conversations throughout June is to just show just how different we all are.
Yeah. And I'm like on that topic, like I have found, and we'll probably get into it more, but like when I came out, there's like at least for me, it has been a journey, and like things about it are exciting and messy, and I feel like how you feel about, or at least how I felt about how I am queer, has like changed over the last 10 years.
Mm,
And I think when I was like really young, there's like this thing of like having that kind of innocence and naivety, and thinking that it is just kind of like a more general thing. Like when I came out as bi, like what does that even mean at the time for me, because I hadn't done a ton of research yet of my own, and I was still really young. And like saying that I'm bi, like, and like men and women, that didn't really eventually, like, that didn't really fit how I felt, because there's like a spectrum, a degree of how much I love men versus women.
mm-hmm.
um and yeah, that totally changed for me, and like became more, I don't know, more layered.
Mm-hmm.
And like it just, yeah, it's different, it changes, it's weird and in flux, and yeah.
Yeah, but I am super glad that you're touching upon that, because that is a conversation that people don't have enough. How fluid it is. Like, just like gender can be really fluid for any kind of person, but especially people who are more in touch with like identity. I think sexuality can be really fluid too, because I don't know if you heard this term, you probably have. I learned it first last year, which shows just how not cool with the kids I am. But last year I had a friend of mine introduce me to the term gold star lesbian.
Hmm.
Have you come across this term?
No, now I'm gonna be the
Oh, finally I can be the cool kid. Okay, so I was told that if you're a gold star lesbian, you've always been gay. You've never had, like, if you're
okay,
a lesbian,
yeah.
you've never had a male partner, like a cis male partner. And I was like, oh, okay, so we go around rewarding people who came out of the womb 100% realized, and then we're shaming everyone else. That's the world we're living in? Okay, because after I learned that, I had in my bio for the longest time, not a gold star lesbian, as kind of like a flack on that, because I found it so dumb. And there really is, like, we keep talking about, like, the queers versus the straights, but sometimes there's the queers versus the queers as well, because it's the quote unquote real queers versus the fake queers and stuff like that. And that kind of mentality drives me nuts, because your gender and your sexuality, your entire identity is your business and nobody else's, unless you wish to make it other people's business. And how you get there and how you realize that, I think, is inherently incredibly personal. And if your idea 10 years ago about being bisexual is completely different than what it is today, that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And I wish that was talked about so much more.
Yeah, I think there's when we're talking about things like casually in conversation with like other people, right? There's like terms and words and labels that you use to kind of like ease the flow of conversation. So like you hear words and you get this like general sense, or you have a bias of what that thing encompasses and means. And just for, ease of being able to just talk about it and navigate it. But when it comes down to like nitty gritty, like s- everybody's experience is so different from each other's. And like the spectrum of all of the different things is so varied. I, yeah, I don't know. It's just like really kind of, I don't know, heartwarming to kind of see people explore things about themselves, especially as they get like older.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know, like, when you think of yourself one way for a long time, it's hard to change that or want to confront that later when you're older and like new experiences have kind of challenged that way of who you thought you were. uh and I mean, now that I'm older, like it just kind of makes sense to me. Like you're not going to be like inherently in other ways aside from your sexuality, you're different than
Mm-hmm.
when you were like 16.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like when you're 40, you're not going to be the 16-year-old
I
that you
sure
were in
hope
some way.
not. Woofaroo.
It like in that way, I'm like, if somebody feels the same way they did when they were 16, like in the way that they describe who they are, then like perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but for people who are in that kind of like, who treat a lot of, or who have this side of them that is like developing with everything else that's developing as they just get older and get more experiences, then I don't think it should not be it should not be as difficult as it is for some people to be able to explore that, I
Yeah,
guess.
no, absolutely 100%. And that's where labels kind of do like a U-turn and bite us in the ass, because it depends what you put into a label and how rigid you are with maintaining that label. Which also is why I find that a lot of people exploring gender can feel like under pressure, because maybe during your time from like one place to another, you're toying with something in between a place, and then people are like, oh, you're this now, I thought you were that. And it's like, shouldn't you just be happy that you're the person in your life is happy? Isn't that what matters?
Mhm. Mhm. And I also feel like sometimes a lot of people, when you okay, I also feel like sometimes when you come out to somebody or tell or describe something about yourself to somebody, that's what they get. They get the end result, or
Mm-hmm.
like you're the end of your decision.
Yeah.
They don't see, like, usually, like, when you have, you know, like when I came out as bi at the time, they had, you know, like, they're very supportive and congratulations and, you know, like, being just good friends and whatever, but they also didn't see how much it took to get to that point. Like, there's so much stuff that goes into coming to that realization about yourself that is attached to so many other things in your life that you've had to, like, think about and deal with. And I just, I don't know. I really try to appreciate that in people when they, like, want to share something about themselves with me, because, you know, like, they could have had to have dealt with a lot of, like, family trauma,
Mm-hmm.
or like things about their childhood that, you know, were really, you know, that yeah, it's like really deep stuff that they have to kind of contend with, that, like, makes up who they are. um so yeah, I try to not take things lightly when somebody tells me something, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Um, to hopefully at least uh bring some much needed like lighthearted angling into this whole queer business. What was your first crush slash fascination that challenged the expectations of society?
Think as Okay, so it was in elementary school, which I would have been like 6 to 8 years old. Uh, my first crush was with a really, really close friend.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, like, yeah, my parents, at least my mother, is very Asian, very. I'm not like, we are not on speaking terms anymore. Like, we're apart, but my mother is, like, very, very traditionally Asian, and I think a lot of Asians will, like, relate to this, but if you're queer and you come out to, like, your Asian parent, they have a tendency to just ignore it
Okay.
and hope that it goes away. They don't confront the issue a
Mm.
lot of the times, and they will make you feel bad and othering through kind of passive, uh not acknowledging, like, that part of you, um or, you know, trying to, like, shame that side of you out. And also, the community that I grew up in was, like, kind of conservative, um and other parents kind of had this, you know, they want to be protective of their kids, so when they see behaviors that are like, I don't like that this one girl is, you know, having, like, these, I don't know, fascinations or attractions to my daughter, and, you know, they'll, like, at the time, you know, parents have the power to be like, you can't hang out with that kid
Mm.
anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
um so there was a girl that I had a fascination with and, like, an attraction to, and, like, she's just really cute, and she's, like, super mature for her age, and I don't know, it's just, you know, like, and dumb me, because, you know, I'm an elementary school kid. I kind of treated it like how you would typically see, like, a lot of kids who have crushes. You know, they like, I don't know, try to puff themselves up, and they're kind of like mean to their crush because they want attention. And, like, you know, I did not know how to translate what I was feeling into, like, a, you know, that it was a romantic feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So it just came out as, like, totally awful behaviors, and that probably did not help, you know.
Oh no.
So, and yeah, I mean, it led to, like, us being separated and not being friends anymore, and that was really sad. But like, she was my first crush, and, like, really, I think, kind of opened that, like, door for me to raising more questions later on, and, you know, as I got into middle school and high school. So yeah.
Yeah. I have to say, I love that this is like typical of me where I'm like, hey, I'm gonna ask you a lighthearted question, and then you show me that even lighthearted stuff can have like such heavy connotations to them, especially with like stuff like family is always so, it can be so challenging and so sore for people to touch on. So first of all, I just want to say thank you for sharing that, because I know people are so different in how they wish to or not wish to relate like family stuff. But also, I think you bringing that story up also, it puts a focus on just how important it is to still be loud and obnoxious about being queer. Because if we as kids, like our generation, I'm not going to ask you, but I do assume we're relatively close in age, and not having, at least like I think most people our generation didn't have that readily available, that it's okay to be gay kind of thing, no matter like background. And it wasn't like that obvious in media or anything, and if it was in media, it was usually very hurtful portrayals. And I think your story about having a childhood crush just shows that had we known it's perfectly normal and acceptable to fall in love with people, for example, of the same gender or whatever, something that like does challenge our heteronormative expectations, we wouldn't have found ourselves in those situations. Like maybe your childhood nature would still have bullied your crush, but you would have been like, oh, it's a crush.
Yeah, I think yeah. It's just when you're that young, you need like guidance or a resource to go to, or like some way to navigate those feelings, and like that should definitely be, you know, how I think a lot of parents like treat like love and affection, and how they explain that to their children like at that age should definitely, you know, be revisited.
Yeah.
Because I definitely know that like at the time I would have really, I don't know, it was a big societal change that would have needed to have happened, you know, when I was that young, but it would have been helpful.
Yeah, no, I think that's safe to say for a lot of people like roughly around our generation. And even today there are places where that sadly hasn't changed the last like 20, 30 years.
Yeah, and I do like acknowledge like that there are, you know, like when I look at how some of the schools are run now,
Mhm.
it is different. Like people think it's like pretty normal now, but like it is different than when I grew up. Like the shift in acceptance and like resources is just so much more, I don't know, prominent in like the school experience, at least in some of the places that, you know, like I attended.
Mhm.
Um, and that feels really good. Like, I don't know, that amount of progress in the span of time that I've been away is like, I do acknowledge like that, you know, there's good things happening. Um, yeah, like when I was in high school, there wasn't any like LGBT clubs, or you know, resources at the office that people could like go to and talk to about that. Um, and it was right after I left, like several years after, maybe right. It was after I had left. Then those clubs started becoming a lot more like involved and prominent, and I don't know. It was really good to see that.
Mhm. Yeah. That actually does remind me, because it's the same when I went to school. There was, as far as I can recall, like basically zero information about any form of queerness, and using gay slurs as insults was completely common in everyday like happenings. And then a couple of years back, I was talking with one of my family members who was then a teenager and was currently attending school. And she told us that we have this dude in class, like he's so homophobic, and and another family member asked her, "Oh, so how does people deal with this guy. Oh no, they think he's super lame. And I was like, whoa, that's such a shift, because if this was when I was a kid, this could easily have been like the hero of the class. But now he was kind of the outcast for being openly homophobic. And I was like, you know, things are changing. And even though it's sad because it probably speaks volumes of this kid's parents, because you picked that up from somewhere, it's still at least a little highlight that the rest of the class is like, oh, just shut up, will you?
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, yeah. Like I said, I love that it is becoming much more like a part of the regular school experience, because it is really hard to be seen as like the other.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. What's the most positive impact being queer has had on you?
So I think for me, it has been a big catalyst for figuring out a lot of stuff in my life, and also like a freedom with like my artwork, and like being able to express who I am, and like to be able to explore who I am too, and not feel like, you know, that you're trapped or keeping some part of yourself like kind of hidden away, or you know. So there's like that kind of freeing aspect of it, and just kind of like clarity in knowing who I am. And yeah, that has been such a nebulous thing for the past, like, I don't know, for the first 20 years of my life. That I can only really describe it as like you kind of walk through life in kind of like a fog. And then like when this kind of thing gets realized about myself that I'm okay with exploring and talking about and having it be a part of like my life more, that fog kind of lifted in terms of like how I saw things and my outlook about like things. And that clarity was, I don't know, it just felt really good. It felt like I could kind of like live life. If that makes sense. Yeah.
How would you say it affected your art, in what themes you portrayed, or like did it more reflect your true self, or like how did it change your artistic perspective?
So I think I've been talking to my partner about this a bit too, because this is more of like a recent thing in the past, I don't know, 5 years or so, to like reflect on how art has kind of helped me in the past. And I think I don't know if this is like an insult to myself, but I think my brain makes connections and works better when I'm making a piece of artwork. So my first I like experience around this was when I was in or when I was really young. I like drew a whole bunch of these artworks, like using a little avatar of myself that I didn't really even realize at the time was, you know, of myself. But this little like avatar girl would like explore these different landscapes and, you know, different worlds and all these different fantasies. And then when I was in high school, my like the art teacher at my high school saw like this, you know, this huge amount of artwork that I had, and at the time I like wasn't really sure if I at all if I wanted to pursue art. And my art teacher was like, there is a lot here, there's like something in there that needs to be explored and come out. And he was like the first person to really like ask me and challenge me in that way about my work. And when I had to do like the senior project, he was like, you can do it about anything you want. and, you know, like explore whatever you want. And so the thing I explored was like bringing that girl avatar to, in a way, like into a more complete, um, I don't know, visual experience. Because at the time it had just been like sketches and, you know, random doodles all up to that point.
Mm-hmm.
So now I can make like a collection of works that was very like focused on this girl and what she was doing. And I still have those pieces. Like they were all traditional ink and like watercolors and acrylic. And it's just like this little girl that kind of, you know, looks like a really young me, and she's going through this like sci-fi landscape, but it's like super lonely. Like there's nobody else in the landscapes, and she's wandering through like with her dog. And that's kind of how I felt at the time, was like there is this me that wants to explore and like figure out things about myself because something feels wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the landscapes that I drew always had this like, I don't know, forebodingness or like a weight. Like it just, and I think that at the time is like exactly how I felt inside. Now that I'm older and kind of can describe what I was feeling, like I definitely felt like the world around me, the environment that I was in, you know, felt like it was trapping me. And you know, I'm like a young person who wants to figure out who I am and where I am in this landscape.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was probably the first kind of like major, you know, breakthrough in terms of how my artwork would like reflect who I am inside, and like any tribulations and anything that I experience, you know, that I can kind of work through it um, in my artworks. And that definitely translates to now, like with, you know, the things that I like to draw and the things that I like see in life that I really enjoy or, you know, dislike, or how it makes me feel. Like I can visually paint that out now. And, you know, the art process is really involved. Like it makes your brain work. Like, you know, all the research that you do and having to like explore things about yourself. And it, I don't know, the art medium for me, it just gives me this channel to like really hyper focus on, I don't know, whatever it is that I'm working through.
Yeah, no, I super relate to that. And I don't know if you relate to this, but have you ever come across people who they always say this with the best of intentions because they want the best for your health and your sanity, but some people will, especially in today's landscape with social media and everything, it can be quite hard to distance yourself and your self-worth and your art's worth from performance on platforms, and how easily you get work, etc., etc., just like how your art reaches out there. And then you have a lot of people who will, like I said, with the best of intentions, try to say you are not your art, because there's more to you than your art. And I don't know if you can relate to this, but I've always gotten so annoyed and frustrated when people say that, because without my art, I am nothing, because my art is so much me and I am so much my art that without it, I would be a completely different person. I wouldn't be Jaws. I would just be some other person doing something that I can't even picture what my life would look like without that ginormous aspect in my life. And listening to you talking about like how you explored your identity and how you can in hindsight see that that's what you were doing, and now it sounds like you're more actively aware that you're doing it. Would you like, does this sound relatable to you at all?
Oh yeah. That is like exactly what I or how I feel that like art has kind of become so involved in like my art and how I think. Like it's been such a huge thing in my early development. I can't really, maybe it will change for me as I get older. Uh or, you know, there are some people out there or there are people out there who treat, art as more of a trade. Like they
Mm-hmm.
don't have that much of a personal attachment to it. Um, but for me, like because it's just so inherently attached to who I am and how my brain works and thinks, like I just could not imagine being able or not being able to express that in some visual format.
Yeah.
Like whether it was, maybe if I, lose my interest for painting or drawing, I would still want to vent it out in other ways. Like I've always wanted to go into miniatures. like I feel like it would still channel itself in other ways
Yeah,
that
yeah,
are, artistic.
absolutely. It's a little bit of a relief to hear that other people can have that. And I don't mean to say that people who don't have that and are artists aren't passionate about their craft. I personally think they are, not to insult you and I, but I think they're probably more leveled and maybe a little more relaxed about certain things in their life. But for me, it is such a driving passion to be one with my craft in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. And, like just like I mean, at least for me in terms of creating work, like I also want to point this out because this has been really recent too. Just because of like another kind of big life event that happened recently, it's made me question this part about myself. But there are some aspects about how art has been so attached to me as a way of like channeling those energies into something, that sometimes it can lead to like being a workaholic.
Oh no,
Like
100%. One
like
hundo.
if I get really stressed out or like there's like stuff going on or I don't feel fulfilled, I could just I could just do art. Like I know that
Yeah,
I can make it and I know that I could do it and I know I can like satisfy that like kind of itch or need.
yeah,
Once you complete a piece, it's like I finished something. I did the thing and then it quickly goes away because I gotta, it's gone and I gotta make more and more work to kind of continue the cycle. So it can lead to like diving or putting, you know, maybe not healthy energies into it too. And that's, like something that I've kind of had to figure out, how to balance that.
mm,
I I like to say that there's like a balance of like life, work, and uh the like the lurk in between.
no,
Like
absolutely.
really it's a passion, but it's my job, but it's like I like need it in my life. It's like really in the middle, but it's this thing that I can't put all of my stresses and stuff into to like compensate or whatever, and so
Yeah, and
yeah.
that exact thing is what I was referring to when I said that, not to like throw people like you and I under the bus, but I do think that people who are a little more separate from their craft in a way, uh, in that aspect at least, live maybe slightly healthier because it can be destructive to be that passionate. It can, like, passion very quickly flows over into obsession. And
Mhm.
I think when you're an artist and you're an artist in the way that we are, you've tasted that obsession more than once in your life.
Yeah, I mean like it's I think if you've done it long enough, it's really hard to notice when it does it too sometimes. Like you don't sometimes realize like how much you're maybe not confronting or putting off by like continuing to kind of like perpetuate that like what I guess how do you put it, like I don't want to say it's like confusing passion with like with work, like it, basically it's like art is my passion and it is work and it must consist of me scheduling and finding more and more and more work, and like that's I don't know, too stressful, like, and I know
Yeah.
at least for me it like covered up a lot of stuff that I needed to deal with
Mm,
like in life.
mm. No, it's that is I recognize myself in that too. And I brought this up in the previous episode as well, how like while I don't like to say that I'm happy about living through a pandemic, because I am definitely not, it also forced me to do so much self-reflection. Because you know, for long stretches of time, I was 100% alone in isolation. I didn't live with anyone and couldn't see anyone. Um, and you know, while you're sitting there, trying not to eat off the walls of boredom, you get, if you are an introspective type like I am, at least you get a lot of quality time to reflect on things. And I will say, at least that time made me have to face the good, the bad, and ugly about everything involving me creating stuff. And
Yeah.
now I'm much, while I still have heaps and bounds to go, I'm much better at recognizing when my art mania sets in, where I'm like, if I'm not creating right now, I am worthless. I'm dying. Like, people won't remember who I am. Like that kind of super toxic insanity side of it. And then I try to be like, whoa there, soldier. And I take a step back and I go, will the world collapse tomorrow if I do not draw at 1 a.m.? Most likely not. Is this art mania I'm feeling right now? Most definitely. Okay, let's go to bed instead.
That's good to hear. Yeah, that is so during the pandemic, I definitely feel like I hit that workaholic phase, and it probably came at like the worst time. Like, so my partner and I got married right before COVID,
Oh, wow.
and obviously, you know, we couldn't foresee what
No,
what was
obviously
gonna
not.
happen. So, like, okay, so my partner and I got married right before COVID, but my partner also came out as trans right before COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And she, like, just, it really sucked not having, like, an immediate supportive network of people that we could, you know, be with and talk to. And at the time, like, I was pretty much the one doing all of that for you know for her and like for both of us.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize it at the time, but that stress like channeled into my art. So I was like, I feel like I'm not doing enough, or like I feel like pent up, or like, you know, getting the I need to be doing something like productive. So then I would fill that with like doing art and finding more and more contracts. And um you know, like now my partner, you know, we've been really, I don't know, like had really, really good and hard discussions the past, I don't know, 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how that like kind of behavior was like, you know, like it's sort of like, I don't know if you're realizing how much you're working. I'm paraphrasing her, but she's like, I don't know if you realize how much you're working, but you're like always stressed out and like not really like focusing on like us and like friend groups and like, you know, and it made me realize that like, oh, you know, crud, I thought I was being like really, really supportive, but I just was like getting, I don't know, stressed and falling into like really bad, you know, compensating behaviors. And like it made me realize like what would happen if I just took some time away from art and hung out with people, or you know, online or something, or like went out with my partner more often, or like, you know, helped her explore like things that she's exploring more often. Like, are things gonna like what bad is going to happen? Because I know you have very, or at least you listed some like very specific things like about if you're not doing art, you feel like, you know, you're not worthless, or that you're worthless and that you're not being seen. But for me, it was like a much more generalized anxiety that didn't really have maybe a particular like specific form. So me stepping away from art more often to kind of like figure this really important aspect of our life out and be there for my partner was like, oh, like my art is still gonna be there when I'm, it's still gonna be there however many or however long it takes for us to like figure out, our stuff. And it also made me realize like how much of my life has been, or how much of my art has been like reflective of my life. And like if I'm not living and having experiences, then my art suffers too.
Mm.
Um and I don't know, it just made me realize that like my artwork can be so much more in harmony with like my life.
Yeah, and that is something that is very present in a lot of creatives' lives where and again, I do think this is also very much brought on by A, social media, and B, living in a capitalist society where you constantly need to make money and you need to be present and stuff like that. But we tend to forget and neglect that we're all our own personal wells, and that well will dry up if we don't refill it with impressions. And
Yeah.
it's so important to just take 2 hours to watch a movie. There's one thing that I especially learned during the pandemic, because I had to entertain myself even more than usual. I would go on long walks because I'm fortunate enough to live in an area where it's so easy to avoid people that at least I could keep going on long walks without ever like meeting other people. And sometimes I would actively catch myself in, like, let's say just looking at some flowers, because as you probably know, I draw flowers a lot. And then I would see those flowers, and I'd be like, oh, new idea for an illustration, better go home and write that down. And I wouldn't have gotten that idea if I didn't go on that walk. And that's
Yeah.
when it started to click with me, like, damn, I really need to get some outside sources in here, because I can't just sit in a room and stare at the wall and hope that it comes to me.
Yep. Yep. And exactly what you're describing is like I feel like a lot of, maybe, I don't know, maybe not a lot of artists, but I feel like there are artists out there who do not acknowledge how much like things in life will affect your like work and
Mm.
like the type of art you want to make. Because like the stuff that was going on like with my partner, like between my partner and I, it was like there were things about it that were like, when relationships deteriorate in certain ways, that affects like how often you can work. Or
Mm-hmm.
like if you have the energy and willpower to even sit down and work for like 30 minutes, like,
Mm.
and like things like that can affect like just even how you make art. um Not even just like the topics that you explore. So yeah, I mean, I guess this is I don't know, a PSA to take a break, invest
Listen
in
to
some
us old
therapy.
artists. We know what we're
I
talking
guess
about here. Okay, let me dive into the next one. What has been the most important career representation in media to you? It can be fictional or real or both.
So I think there are, so in media, I remember there being two very specific experiences when I was really young.
Mm.
Um, so a little bit of context. My father is not as traditional as my mother. He was born in America and he always had this, I don't know, he's also Chinese, but like he had this like desire to go into like sci-fi and engineering and blow stuff up when he was younger. uh, and he had this like streak to him of being more open and fun and all that, and that kind of leached into my experiences with him when I was young. And so
Mm.
he introduced me to like, which he probably should not have when I was that young, but it's fine. So he introduced me to like Alien and Ghost in the Shell, and and stuff like that. And like I specifically remember when I was watching Ghost in the Shell, and I'm talking about the movie Ghost in the Shell. Um, there was something like even at that young age, I picked up on like the transhuman aspects of like people switching bodies,
Mm.
people not feeling like who they are, and like this that whole aspect. Even if at the time as a little kid I did not know the terms or exactly what was going on, I picked up on those like themes, and I remember that really affecting like how I felt at that age. uh and then Sailor Moon. Sailor Moon, I remember being very big when I was younger, because I was like super attracted to the characters. Like they're just so pretty. Um, and I remember that being pretty formulative of that age too.
Mm-hmm.
And um, that other one I mentioned, Alien. Yeah, I specifically remember Alien because of the I don't know how to describe the environment, like the
Mm.
environments and how they were so like, especially later in the movie when things get really dark and ominous and heavy, and like there is a feeling of that environment that felt very eldritch and just wanted to like suck you in and like keep you there. I think
Yeah.
that was really formulative in the type of like um again, like that type of feeling that I felt when I was like young. um and yeah, I don't know, those things kind of stuck with me.
I think I'm so horrible with names, but the main character in Alien is called Ripley, right?
Mm,
I think.
yeah, yeah, and Ripley.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think there is really something to that because you sounded like an Alien fan. You probably already know this, but the role of Ripley was initially written for a man, and then the role went to Sigourney Weaver, and they didn't change anything about the role itself. And for a movie from is Alien, the original one is from the 70s, right? Or is it from the 80s? I think it's 70s. At least it's hella old. Is all I can say. In a landscape where there were much bigger divides in gender roles in the movies. And
Right.
Ripley is so gender neutral and like a really freaking cool badass, and there's never like there's even a scene as far as I recall, because I watched this movie last year, and there's a scene where she is almost naked. She's wearing like some very, very tiny underwear, and you see her entire butt hang out. But there's nothing inherently sexual about it because it's so sterilized, and she's just like a person on the job getting ready to either get in or get out of the pod. I can't remember from the top of my head. But I think it is very
Yeah,
visible
yeah.
that her role was initially written for a man, and that you wouldn't have that like male gaze on a male character, and they just stuck with that. And I think that is why that particular character stands out so much to a lot of people in general, but especially queer people, because it was so nice to see just, I guess, gender neutrality in a way.
Yeah, yeah, I do remember that too. Like it like I said, there was something about Aliens, about this character that I felt was like I felt some kinship to when she was, having to explore the depths of the ship when it got taken over by aliens and converted into this really gloopy, slimy, disgusting, thing. And it's just her being wanting to survive and like figure out how to get out of, this situation. And it just the way it was like depicted and the way Ripley is depicted, it just, I don't know, it clicked with me as like a kid. Like, man, I really, I don't know, I'm getting emotional and feel like this is talking about me somehow.
But it is that way though. Like if you are very interested in media will have that impact on you, because I can get like my big thing, like my tearjerker immediate catalyst is music, and especially video game music. Like I am not a person who easily cries, and everyone who knows me knows that I am emotionally constipated. But I have been crying on stream playing video game music because I'm like, it's so beautiful, because it just hits all those like emotional buttons in me. So I super get being like, oh my god, getting emotional about a movie that means a lot to you, because that's just the power of media.
Mhm. Mhm.
That does kind of like perfectly segue into the next one, because it made me want to say, I hope that my work can have that effect on someone out there, if not now, then someday. And that leads me to the question: do you have any passion project relevant to being queer, and that you hope to affect people around you, or people you will never maybe even meet in that way?
Yeah, I am always, I don't know, looking out for well, I mean, for my personal artwork, like all that stuff that we talked about before, about like that little girl exploring through this surreal, foreboding, claustrophobic kind of sci-fi environment, like that I've tried in so many ways to put into different mediums to try and like share that with more people.
Mm-hmm.
Went from like a collection to like an art book to, a game. And the game is a work in progress. I don't know if it's something that, I don't know. Like, I feel like things about translating that experience into a medium, it's a work in progress.
Mm.
There's just so much involved with that. But like, that's a big one, like a big overarching project that I'd like to get out there. And then, working with like people who are making zines or doing charity streams or anything that like benefits a cause,
Mm-hmm.
or like are putting together or supporting artists, putting together a collection of artists under a cause. Like I really love those kinds of projects. So like the Classics But Make It Gay art book, and like all these monster and eldritch zines. Like
Mm-hmm.
I love being a part of those. It's just great to be, around people who are all about the weird and the amorphous, and um so yeah, like the in terms of like personal stuff, that's the stuff I kind of like exploring, like really, really, deep emotional stuff for myself. But then collaborative projects, you know, that's like a big one for me.
Yeah,
Um,
I just had an epiphany, and it's funny that I didn't even think about this earlier. But I've invited like several artists, because I try to like not only do artists, but it's hard to get away from like what your immediate mutual circle is when you do something like this. So obviously there's going to be a lot of artists on this podcast during June, and it just
mhm.
dawned on me that so many of the people, myself included, draw monstrous imagery that a lot of people can find either grotesque or unsettling or unnerving or scary or bizarre or like difficult to connect it. And I was just sitting here just like doing as you were talking about like the monster scenes and stuff like that. And I was hit with the question like, what the fuck is up with that? What's up with being queer and like being a monster fucker? Like, what's up with that?
There is, so I know for me, like the monster aspect of things is definitely much more of like a personal like reasoning and aesthetic for me. Like
Mm-hmm.
I love amorphous things, like beings that don't inherently like fit in a mold in a particular way, or like that they're ever changing. Like I really like that aspect of at least the type of monsters that I like to draw, is like I don't know, they feel like they could be evolving and like changing and flowing. So that's like a big, theme that I really like for my monsters. And I think like a lot of people, I guess, like um, relate to that aspect of it. And I also like draw a lot of women, like because I've found that I've, at least recently, I'm pretty sure that I'm way more into women than I originally believed I was. Like way more into women. But like a lot of the artworks that I draw, like I try to come at it from like a feeling, like I want this artwork to evoke something, um, or have like some narrative to it that is weird or challenging or surreal. Not, and I don't always like, I don't know, I don't usually approach my artworks from like a, like, that I find this thing attractive aspect.
Okay.
And like it's kind of funny because I was at a like a convention or something, and somebody was like describing my artwork to somebody else, and they said, "Oh yeah, I really like this artist because they draw like horny horror." And I'm like, what?
Pardon?
Like, is that how people see my artwork? And yeah, so it's funny because like I can, now that I know that, I could see it, like, I could see how my artworks could be that way. Um, but if people would like the artist interpretation, then yeah, I don't know. My artworks, I don't know, they just come from a genuine place, and I think people like enjoy or are attracted to aspects of that. Whether it's the horny horror aspect of it or like the, atmosphere and mood and message of it, yeah.
Oh my god, that's such a crude description.
It's like,
Oh.
oh.
Yeah, for what it's worth, and I'm not trying to like devaluate this other person's approach, but I never got like the horny feeling from your art. It's more like this rawness that I read from it. Like it's so interesting having gotten to know you a little bit through this conversation, because like full disclosure for anyone listening is that before this conversation we have exchanged like, I don't know, 5 words or something. We don't like
Yeah, like 5 messages.
yeah. We haven't like talked in depth about anything. So, and you always form one, or I say you always, but I can only speak for myself. But I think it's pretty common to form one aspect of an artist by just seeing their art, and then a completely different when you hear the artist speak. And hearing you tell your story and seeing your art again now, I'm like, oh my god, it makes so much sense. Like, I can see so much of what you're putting out there in your art as well. But even without that subcontext, I wouldn't have seen your art and be like, oh yeah, damn, she horny. I would just be like, this is a person who is very, like, I think my immediate interpretation would have been like that you just, you gravitate towards some form of horror aspect and a deeper storytelling in your art. That's the vibe that I got. I never saw it and was like, oh man, oh yeah, she's really into the slutty characters or whatever.
Yeah, I am more amused, I think. But yeah, I mean, there's something there, like, you know, the types of things that we like, or the types of like creatures or forms, and things that we enjoy. Like, I won't say that they're not indicative of things that I like in real life. Like,
Mm.
I love plants, and I don't know, sometimes the way I talk about plants, maybe somebody will interpret that, differently than me. Like, I don't know, I like plants' forms. I like their little tentacly arms and like all their like shapely leaves. So I can understand how, things can get translated.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but not everything has to be read with like a sexual context. You can just really admire something completely devoid of any sexual energy.
Yes, yeah. It was just amusing. But yeah, the messages and the theme and the mood, like that's where I try to like come from in my artworks. And yeah.
Ugh, I know we could like, from the energy I'm getting here, we could talk about like both being an artist and being queer all night long. But I'm gonna round it off with my last question, which is, if you could go back in time and speak with your 13-year-old self, what would you say?
I I would okay, so I think if I could go back, that I think, okay, the me at the time would have really probably benefited from hearing that things are not set in stone.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to be so stressed about having it all figured out to a T. Because like we said in our earlier conversation of like, I am not the same person as I was when I was 20 or 15 or 9 years old.
Mm.
I didn't need to have like my whole job figured out or my retirement plan figured out, or like I didn't have to know everything about my, you know, like I did not have to be so sure about like my sexuality to um at at a young age, like that there is room for things to kind of evolve and grow, and life is messy and weird, and like that it's exciting in that way, and that it's good to kind of be here.
Oh, that's so sweet. I really like that. Especially the part about like it's okay to goof along the way. It's fine. Like you'll figure it out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I am still kind of a stressful person, like, but but definitely me before 22, I don't know. I was a super stressed person, like stressed about everything.
Yeah, I can I can funnily enough, I feel like I've gone the opposite route where a lot of people get more stressed as they get or they were very stressed as when they were young, and like you like the world felt so big and so small all at once, and you all that stress just pent up inside, and you didn't have like a good way of expressing this because you're awkward and you're messy and you're young. But as a young teenager, I was like the cliche of like, I don't fucking care, man, whatever. I was such a whatever teenager. Uh, and now as an adult, I'm just like, oh, if I don't have like everything under 100% control, like everything is stressing me the heck out. So whenever I hear people who are like, you know what, I'm still a little bit stressed, I'm like, whew, it's not just me. Whew.
Yeah, I definitely think, like I said, like how we grew up and like who we are when we were younger, especially like those formative years when your brain is still, developed. Like I don't
Mm,
remember what the age is. Like your brain isn't like fully developed until you're like 25 or something. I don't know what it is,
yeah, it's something along those lines.
but like I definitely grew up like from a very very traditional Chinese household where like you're pretty much expected to be an adult as soon as you're out of the womb. Like like you're supposed to have the whole life set ahead of you when you're born. So I think for me that reversal is probably because like I've spent my childhood being an adult. Like now that I'm adult, I want to experience all the like childhoodness
Mm.
now. Um so yeah.
But that's the thing I think I see in a lot of millennials, because we like a lot of people regardless of background were in a weird way expected to be adult very early,
Hmm.
or maybe you just lived a life where, depending on your situation, that was just forced upon you. You just had to be mature early. And I see a pattern of a lot of millennials being like, you know what, I'm in my 30s and I'm gonna fucking watch Pokemon, I don't care, watch me. Because it's kind of like they're playing catch up with something that was lost to them as actual kids.
Hmm. Yep. Yep.
And to me, there's something very beautiful about that. Just seeing an adult being like, yeah, I do sleep in bed with 30 plushes. So what? That's cathartic for me. Or I'm completely splurging on Legos or whatever. Like what is considered childish in quotation marks. So many people our age are just saying fuck it to that and doing it anyway because it brings them happiness, and at the end of the day, that's what matters.
Yeah, I mean, I always love people who are passionate about talking about something or many things that they love doing or have, and sometimes I definitely like grew up with some people who were very much like, if you were too passionate about something, they saw it as being like weird or
Mm.
nerdy or like strange. And it didn't even matter what it was. Like, you could have been into like, you could have just been a tad too much into, I don't know, photography or like some mundane thing.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, like, you treaded into being weird. Um, and I'm like, I don't know, just like, why? Like, I love when people have, you know, like these deep passions for things and are knowledgeable about really like varied, weird things. Like, yeah, I don't know. It's not weird.
Yeah, and to me at least, there's something both relatable and trustworthy about someone who dares to 100% embrace something and not be ashamed of that and articulate their dire love for something instead of trying to suppress it. Like, not to compare like collecting Pokemon cards in your 30s to being queer, but it is kind of just another aspect that you're shameless about and you're open about, and that in turn, at least to me, brings safety about a person, because I'm like, oh, you dare to tell me that you're collecting Yu-Gi-Oh. That's rad. Now I feel like I know more about you and we can bond.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I just like appreciate seeing somebody feel good and happy about, something in their life. And when somebody feels pressure to not be or to not want to explore and like do those kind of like deep dives into things, you end up not being like specialized or passionate about anything.
Mm,
But
mm,
like, so, it's I yeah. If we
yeah.
ever meet in real life, if you got a passion about something, just, I don't know, vent at me, rant about it at me. I
Gi-
like listening.
just give me some liquor I love and put on some video game music and you can't shut me the fuck up, I think.
Good to know.
Then the faucets are open and you'll be like, I take it back, please, Uno reverse card, stop. Oh my goodness. It's been such a delight chatting with you. It's been lovely having you here, Jessica. Thank you so much. Do you have any last things you want to say before we round this up?
Happy Pride again.
Yeah, happy Pride.
And I don't know, it's been a lot of fun, and I'm glad that like you put together this kind of event, and glad I could make it in and be able to chat with you and meet you in this way. Like, I think this is really really cool.
Yeah, I again, like I said before we started, I'm so happy that you just DM'd me and you were like, "Hey, I would love to be part of this project." And despite us never having truly spoken beyond a couple of words previously, and I was super happy to see that. So again, thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right, I'll wrap it up then, and I'll catch you on the flip side.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Alrighty, everyone. Again, thank you so much to the lovely Jessica. You can find them at Annie Reel on Twitter, so go check them out. They are phenomenal. I will also share the link in chat before I head out. And I'll see you all next week when the next guest comes on. Until then, take care of yourself, love one another. Bye.